questions. You can take it wherever you like. We have people here who are in the States, maybe want to know how the American Jewish world and the American context for Jews looks from an Israeli perspective.
Okay, I could tell you, from my, bit of experience that I was in December touring the United States. I went to like 7 Jewish communities, and some of the places were shut down for a whole 2 years. And when I came, they had like a hybrid panel, so I was speaking to a crowd, but also they were, zooming it out, which was a challenge for me. But one thing that was I was asked about from all over. I mean, I was in Chicago, Milwaukee, Pennsylvania, and Maryland, and New York. And I've been asked everywhere about this participant of the Islamic movement in the Israeli government, which was kind of an interesting and new to many people. And they have never heard the name of Mansour Abbas. Some of them never heard the name Naftali Bennett. And so they were asking a lot of questions. How does this work together? And I explained to them it's like having maybe the Tea Party sitting together with the Justice Democrats in the same government. So it is really a weird time in history for us, and very complicated trying to explain that. But then with that, I think it's also a time of pride. As you know, unlike Boaz, I think this government really represents the Israeli people, because it is so diverse and it's so inclusive. It represents more people from all walks of life in the Israeli society than maybe ever in Israel's history. So we have never seen representative of the Arab society in the government. The left, the liberal left, has been outsiders for so long. And now suddenly they're in, I don't know for how long, I mean, maybe for, a year or two. But definitely we see something very different. Only component maybe that is not part of the government, it's the ultra-Orthodox. They're not part of this government, but they have been part of so many governments. So they're left out from this government, but they could, potentially be back in. So all, questions that I got from Jewish communities were very, very curious. How does this work day to day? Can they keep it up? What's the meaning? And also I got, lots of questions about the criminal trial of the former prime minister.
We'll come to that as well. Go on, Boaz. You can respond to Tal by all means, but also try and answer the question, because I think it's interesting. What is our sense of the diaspora and the American Jewish community, especially including after things like Colleyville, the fundamental security of the diaspora community, and so on?
Very important question for me. Maybe it's the main question for me today in this. I mean, on the contrary, in a panel like this, and with a public like this, and with a host like this, like ours. First of all, a lot of respect. A lot of respect, I mean, to the American Jewish community. A lot of respect to Jews all over the world. I mean, Israel or Jerusalem doesn't belong to me more than it belongs to them. I mean, the Jews all over the world, for me, I mean, when they come here, I would like them to feel at home. It's not a question of being, for them, I mean, Israel and America, it's not choosing a wife and a mistress. No, it's the wife and the wife. And they should be very loyal to America, which is their home. Yet they're very lucky they have 2 homes. This is huge. This is the beauty of being a Jew in America or in France or in Australia. And very good. It should be like this. I have no problem. Yet. These are very rainy days in Israel right now. These are very, very odd days. But not only in Israel. Let me calm you down. There is an amazing book. If you do not read it, please. On your flight back to America, you've got, 12 hours, 15 hours, 11 hours, wherever you go. Those who go to West Virginia, you'll have more time, if anyone is from West Virginia. There is a book of Stefan Zweig, The World of Yesterday. It's an amazing book, Stefan Zweig. Why is it an amazing book? Because you've got this Stefan Zweig, by the way, a Jew himself, from Vienna. And he lives in Vienna, this is amazing days in Vienna, Philharmonic, opera. When he writes an opera, it doesn't come to you or to me. It goes to Theodor Herzl. I mean, look at the people who were there running a newspaper. And this was huge. Do you think he imagined that not one world war, but 2 world wars are just waiting there, expecting for him? And I believe that nowadays, I don't say that there's, God forbid, a world war waiting for us. God forbid again. But this is a changing world. We can see it. I mean, this is a fact. You see that everything we do, all the principles we grew up with are totally changed. You want me to be very concrete and give you examples? I gave it this morning to an Israeli politician. Imagine 30 years ago, we would meet here and we would say, The Twin Towers, I mean, they will fall. Imagine Arafat will get a Nobel Prize. Imagine a man with a kippah will kill an Israeli prime minister. And I can give you more and more German planes bombarding over Europe with Kosovo again, as we said. So many things, I mean, that you could not even predict, and you don't know what will happen tomorrow. And why do I say this? I say this because also Israel by itself, and when I was a kid, or a teenage, I always said, I mean, we're here to stay. We're here to stay forever. We have no problem. I mean, enough with this. Maybe Israel will not exist in a few years. And all this paranoia, even me myself, I said, enough. I mean, we're very strong. But we're strong because of also our convictions, because of our values. And why do I say that to my American friends? Look at me. I'm not that. I mean, I'm very traditionalist. I'm tradition. We do Shabbat, you know, the Kiddush. We buy of course, the challah. I take my son to the synagogue Saturday morning. I like very much him under my talit in the Birkat Kohanim, usually the Musaf, because Shacharit, he comes always late with his mother. Yet we try to do whatever we can, the most we can. And why do I do that? Not because I want him to be very religious. No, sometimes when my mother-in-law comes, she doesn't like God. But when my mother-in-law comes, so sometimes we even take the car. God maybe doesn't watch. But why do I say that? I want my Jewish values, because this is very, very important. Because I want my Jewish values, because this is the best ally of Zionism. And this is why this is very important for me. Why do I go to Halacha so much? Because this is the importance. So everyone can make whatever he wants. Me, myself, you think I do Taryag mitzvot? Of course not. Maybe I do maybe 10% of them. But I respect them. I don't want to change my halacha. I don't want to change the idea, my concept of a Jewish state, because this is my guarantee. Because if I'll go to certain of those my actual government, that I wish them to succeed because they're my government, and Bennett is my prime minister, and Yair Lapid is my minister of foreign affairs, and I respect them, and I want them to succeed. I won't vote for them, but I want them to succeed. Yet, what is important? They think that if you go to the world, and we shall act like you, we shall be cosmopolite, we shall be like all the world. And I go back to Stefan Zweig, because you know in Germany Jews thought exactly the same thing. And look what happened. So on the contrary, we have to keep our values and the value of a Jewish state. And this is why Jews in America sometimes, who look at us in a very critical way on state religion issues, we do that not because we want to be more religious. We will do that in order to protect the idea for Zionism. We do it for the next generations, not in order to be all of us, you know, dressed up in black and be very, very religious. We do it for Zionism. We do it also for the secular Jews. And Jonathan Sachs, a great rabbi of Great Britain who passed away, and we all loved him and respected him. Jonathan Sachs had one of the most wonderful sentences, one of the wonderful quotes I'll remember. It's being secular in Israel, being secular, but to breathe Judaism. And if we forget that, we can close the door, immigrate, you go back to wherever you came, I'll go back to wherever I came. Tal Schneider was born here, so maybe they will let us stay here. Anyway, and in order to finish, you spoke about this government that represents the people. I would say only one thing. If representing the people is making a coalition, and by the way, I criticized Netanyahu when he spoke with Ram, so I'll be honest and I'll say before you give he made a big mistake on April, flirting with them. If being representing the people is doing business with a party that is not only anti-Zionist, it's for him, Jews are just a religion, they're not a national entity, so we have a problem. If making a representing the people is having my good friend Nitzan Horowitz, Minister of Health, who thinks that Israeli soldiers should be judged in Hague, then I have a problem. And only to tell you, we take President Rivlin. You remember Rivlin, just before Herzog, you know? And he had his speech. He divided us in four. You remember four tribes? 4 tribes. Good, 4 tribes. And he said, we have the tribe. Let me be polite. I'll start. We're in Jerusalem. Of course, we have Arabs in Jerusalem, like 300,000. I respect them. And he said, we've got 4 tribes. We've got the Arabs. Very good. We've got the Haredim. Very good. We've got the national religious. Bennett. Very good. Religious Zionist. Very good. We have the secular. Amazing. They're the most fun to be with. What about me? Where is me? Where is me?
Secular.
No, I'm not secular at all. Come with me. You go to the synagogue every Saturday. You make a kiddush every Friday. Your wife goes to the mikveh, or your husband goes to the... Of course not. Where am I, the traditionalist? Where am I in this country? And this is why also in the government right now, 35 seats who are in a party, you know, a very minor party, ruled by a crook, Netanyahu, of course, the Likud I'm talking, 35 small party, little party. Not represented.
But
39
I want to push back on
not
that.
represented, not represented. So let me tell you one thing. This is the problem of
They
I wanna
have
representation.
push back on that
They have
'cause-
29, not 35.
Hang on a sec.
Boaz
29.
and I used to go to the same
Okay,
synagogue
guys.
for
How
years.
much has Bennett?
With 29 out
Just
of
how much has
120,
Bennett-
they're not a
just how much has
majority.
Bennett?
Because
How much
it's
has Bennett?
not Friday night on Channel 12, and we've got plenty of time, and nobody's going to cut you off. Lahav, to you.
Yeah, I want to push back on that a little bit. I do know that many Likudnikim are traditional, but not necessarily Orthodox Jews. But I don't think that Likud is the party of traditional Jews for more than one reason. I mean, first of all, Boaz and I went to the same synagogue in Tel Aviv for years, and then I don't know where you go now, but you switched a few years ago. And that's okay, no judgment. I'm just saying, in that synagogue, I think most people didn't vote for Likud, and I think a lot of people there would be considered traditional by Israeli standards and not Orthodox. There's all different, and you look at one of the top people in Meretz, who is somebody his name is Uri Zaki, he puts on tefillin and talit, every day. And he's not a Knesset member, he's one of the top administrators in the party. So I think there's a really big range politically. You have people left, right, and center who are traditional, and polling shows that like 80% of Israelis believe in God. I think it's 80% of Israeli Jews believe in God. So if the spectrum of traditional starts from believing in God through, being very careful about Shabbat and kosher, at that point you become Orthodox. It's the vast majority of Israelis. So I don't know that that's an argument for Likud. But to get to the original question.
Now, what was that original question? Yes, good.
How do Israelis see American Jews?
Thank you, Lahav.
Yes, it's a little bit of a difficult question for me to answer because I am an American Jew in addition to an Israeli Jew. But my impression, which is unfortunate in a way, is that most Israelis don't give American Jews a lot of thought until there's something big that happens. Until there's a Koliville, until there's a Tree of Life shooting, until there's a Hyper Kasher in Paris, then they think about it. But day to day, it's not a big part of their lives. And I, for many years, have been coming to this conference and other conferences and things in the Knesset where people discuss how we can change that. I do think an effort needs to be made. I don't have the answers, but I think that there needs to be maybe an element in education so that you're starting from a young age so that people understand that, half of the world's Jews are outside of Israel and it's important to understand their lives and to understand that we're all one family. I think that, probably most American Jews have very little concept of what's happening in Israel and that Jewish education in America is extremely important and we're losing a lot of people every year in that respect. So I think both sides really have to work really hard to continue to build this connection. As someone who immigrated to Israel from America, first of all, I would often get the question, and I wonder if this changes with new immigrants because there's been high-profile anti-Semitic events in recent years, but when I came in 2005, people were like, why would you come here from America? Like, why would you come to this backwater? And I would be like, you're Israelis, like, aren't you Zionists? Like, don't you understand that this is, to me, I came here, this is the future of the Jewish people, and I want to be part of it, and I want to be here. But a lot of Israelis think also, the stereotypical, America, the streets are paved with gold, the golden Medina, even though most Israelis don't know Yiddish. And so they don't give it a lot of thought. They think that, life is good in America, and and the other thing that I think is really interesting, and it sort of touches on something that Boaz mentioned, I think it was Boaz, that, in Israel you were quoting Rabbi Sachs, and in Israel you sort of breathe Judaism, even if you're secular, is that I think a lot of Israelis come to America not understanding that they arrive in America and they think that they will continue to breathe Judaism and that their children will continue to breathe Judaism and that they'll just get it by osmosis the way you do in Israel. Because in Israel you really do. In Israel, if it's almost Shavuot, there's sales on dairy products in the supermarket, you don't even have to think about Shavuot because there's a cheesecake making kit in the refrigerator in the supermarket. And in America, of course, it's not like that. I would venture that most American Jews don't know what Shavuot is or when Shavuot is. And so I think that's something else that Israelis don't, I'm not saying that to judge Americans. I'm saying that Israelis do not understand the challenge of being a Jew as a minority, as opposed to being a Jew as a majority. And it's a huge, huge difference in the way people live their lives and the way people see Judaism.
David, do we have some time for...
Fine by me, sure.
Okay, from questions on the floor, I'll be happy to call you as I see you. Okay, so Harriet from AJC. Is that Amelia? Debbie, okay.
Thank you very much. I think it was Danny Gordis who wrote about the difference in the founding of Israel and the founding of the United States. Jews in Israel were born as a people. It was a peoplehood identity. Jews in the United States were more of a religious freedom kind, and so their identities are more with, if they're in an organized shul or whatever. American Jews, unfortunately, to my mind, have less of a sense of peoplehood than I would hope. And that is, I think Israeli Jews and American Jews are sometimes talking to each other in parallel, as opposed to really talking with enough insight and education that they owe each other. So I hope, that we can merge the families on the same playing field, because we really are family.
Do you have any comment?
I don't know if we need to comment on that. You actually didn't ask a question, which is just fine. There's no question. Your identity here is you're Israeli. That's, I come from a very, very Orthodox background, but you don't need to, even internally, you don't need to play up your Judaism because you're living in the Jewish state. Obviously, it's very different. I'm just not sure that there isn't, a pretty serious crisis. I'm not sure that we're not really misunderstanding each other fairly fundamentally. And I think as time goes by, I wonder about younger diaspora Jews' identification with Israel, support for Israel. I think there is a core of tremendous support, and there's an immense proportion who are very alienated and for whom we're very discomforting, because sometimes we have to actually, use our military capabilities to protect ourselves. That's, that doesn't look good unless or until you start to dig a little deeper. So I think the relationship's complicated. I think it's probably been harmed in the last couple of years because the birthright mini miracle has been unable to operate on the level that it did, but we need it in the other direction as well. In the Knesset, including in very senior positions, I think there's an immense amount of ignorance about fundamentals of diaspora Judaism. I mean, staggeringly so. And coming back to one of the original things that I asked about in terms of the functionality of this government, and in my sense that it's scared of its own shadow. The Western Wall compromise, potentially very alienating that's been scrapped. You would have thought this government has every opportunity to revive it and to give non-Orthodox Judaism some kind of status here, but they're backing away from that. So that's, a little bit of a response there.
Okay, I see Debbie, and then there's the gentleman in the back.
Oh, wow.
I can't see the people from here.
Hi, Debbie Isaac, the president of the American Zionist Movement. I have two questions that are unrelated to each other, but I hope that somebody there can answer them. So the first question is, you spoke somewhat positively about this government and somewhat not so positively about this government, and it took a very long time to get to this government. Is there any discussion still about election reform so that we don't, or you, because I'm not now Israeli, get to a situation where there's 3-4 years of elections again? So that's my first question. My second question is, on this subject of diaspora Jews, there's a lot of discussion, or a lot of, I want to say, lip service given to relations with diaspora Jews from the government. But I haven't seen a real channel for that dialogue. Do you see there being an avenue opened up for that channel for a real dialogue with the government?
Okay, I don't know who wants to respond. Lahav, you want to go first on the electoral reform question?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer both, really. But on electoral reform, I mean, I've been covering Israeli politics for about a decade at this point, and there's constantly proposals often based on proposals by the Israel Democracy Institute, which you would look up. They've written many, many papers on the topic. But there's very rarely enough political buy-in for it to move forward as a whole. And so you have these tiny little piecemeal steps that don't make such a huge difference. The last time we had something that made a very big difference was raising the electoral threshold it's currently at 3.25% of the vote in order to get into the Knesset. And that made the real effect it had was that it forced Arab parties to join up together in what's called the joint list and run together. Beyond that, it didn't really have an impact. There was a hope that it would make larger parties and blocs in the Knesset, and then it would be more stable, that coalitions wouldn't be able to be taken down by a tiny party. But now they could be taken down by a party with 4 seats, as opposed to 2 seats before. And the other thing is they have this thing called the Norwegian law, which I'm not going to get into the details, because the point is that these things are very minor, what they're able to pass, and I don't really see there being serious electoral reform anytime soon.
If I may add, they just passed halfway. I think only first call need to go to the second and third round of the term limitation. And this is not a reform per se. It's a term limitation, but we must say that it can be cancelled. I mean, next government, which will have 61 seats, can just take it and just cancel the bill. So even if they pass it, they can cancel it for the next government. So I would say it's like limited term limitation. So the term limitation is supposed to be 8 years only from the 25th Knesset, which means it doesn't include the 12 years that Netanyahu already set. So if he wins again, he has a fresh 8 years limitation, which can be canceled. And as we all know, his parents lived to be around 100 years old. So, I mean, he's only 73, Boaz? 73. So we do have enough time.
He's certainly mentally fit.
Let's just clarify
young for his age.
That bill means that a prime minister can serve for a maximum of 8 years.
By the way, when you hear all those comments, no need to watch Monty Python movie. Continue.
Did any of you want to answer the second question about a forum for Israel and the diaspora? So I'll just, you did, didn't you? Yeah, sorry.
Well, just on the basic, almost technical level, there's a position in the Prime Minister's office who's supposed to be an advisor for diaspora affairs, and Bennett has basically, the person hired for that position is actually just serving as like the assistant to his foreign affairs advisor. Now, when I've asked Bennett and his staff about it, they're not saying, like, to me, it looks like you're not taking diaspora seriously. And they're saying, no, Bennett doesn't need an advisor because he knows the diaspora so well. He lived in the diaspora. He was a diaspora affairs minister. I think that that's wrong. Even if Bennett knows the diaspora really well, he doesn't have someone on his staff dealing with those issues as his full-time job. And so I think that it's not, and so he doesn't have somebody who's going to come into his office and say, this is urgent, please put this on your table for today. And so I do think that there is a problem in this government when it comes to that. I mean, Netanyahu left that office open for a while as well, but he did have one for most of his years in office, and I think that it's an important job.
But we do have a Minister of Diaspora Affairs in our vast government of 30-something people, but there's nobody coming in and saying this Western Wall compromise thing. You can't just ignore it. It's a really big problem. So
right, I mean, the only person who did it was Nachman Shai, the Minister of Diaspora Affairs, and then also Elazar Stern, the Minister of Intelligence, who wanted to be the head of the Jewish Agency and then put his foot firmly into his mouth. But those were the only people who sort of in the cabinet were like sort of raising their hands and being like, hello, we're giving all this money to the Knesset and none of it is going to the egalitarian section. But yeah, there's not someone who Bennett is seeing day to day in his office.
But we really want to tell you that when you care about us, if there's a Colleyville or there's a Poway or there is a Tree of Life Synagogue, we feel that you are connected to us, and we do feel your concern, and that's very gratifying and makes us feel very, very grateful to you. Thank you for that. So I saw Mark, and I saw Wendy, and I saw Karen, and I don't know if we have time for any more.
Okay. So my name is Mark Dratch with the Rabbinical Council of America. As an Orthodox rabbi, I'm very much aware of and engaged in the questions of the kashrut reform that you mentioned, conversion reform, reforms for appointing rabbinic judges, and changes in the election for the chief rabbis. So my question is, how much is the larger Israeli society interested and concerned about those things? Number two is, will it make any difference? And number three is, if and when the government does change, is the whole thing a bracha levatala, a blessing in vain altogether?
Okay, anybody want to tackle that?
I want to be very short about that. I think about the kashrut reform. The Israeli people were engaged or interested in that because some of the effect would be, maybe of the cost of living in restaurants and cafe may drop. We don't know that yet. It will go into effect only a year from now. As per the conversion reform, I just want to say, breaking news, I just got it on my phone, the government just approved the conversion reform as we are speaking here. So also that's interesting news.
But as someone who keeps kosher and is Orthodox, I care about these reforms because I am not Haredi, and I don't think that I have to follow what Haredim follow. I should be able to seek the services of rabbis who fit my religious ideology. And it's the same with conversion. All the chief rabbinate is the one certifying all the rabbis who would be conducting conversion under this reform. Okay, it's a lowercase r reform, not a capital R reform. And it's, so if these are rabbis that are good enough to be certified by the chief rabbinate, they should be able to conduct conversions. And some of them might be friendlier and put a better face on Judaism. And conversion is a huge issue because if you are Orthodox and you would like Jews to marry other Jews, there are hundreds and thousands of non-Jewish Israelis who are basically living like secular Jews in Israel, and you don't know the difference until you're dating someone for a while and the person says, by the way. That's going to be a problem. You're going to have people intermarrying in the state of Israel, which I realize not everyone in this room may consider a problem, but certainly many Israelis do consider that a problem, especially the Orthodox ones. And as far as kashrut is concerned, growing up in the U.S., we knew which hechshers we were okay with, and we knew that there were some hechshers that some people ate at and that we weren't okay with. And Haredim in Israel are like that as well. There were private hechshers before, they were just the extra strict ones. So now you'll know that maybe some hechshers are less strict, some are more, and you'll eat according to what your rabbi or your family custom is.
Boaz, you want to say something?
Yeah, I'll add just a little small contribution, not directly to your question, but only to give you a bit how it looks like in Israel in comparison to other countries. When it comes to eat, and when you look at our friends, the Orthodox, the amount of, how many kinds of kosher you have. Very complicated, very complicated. It's only when I flew to India the first time that I saw that there were more complicated people than us in a plane to India, because they've got like 20 kinds of kosher in brackets. 20 kinds of vegetarian, very vegetarian. You cannot look at this alone. And by the way, why do I mention India? Because this will bring me to the second part, to the conversion, and give you my opinion. And I think that many Israelis do. I share the opinion of many Israelis. In a flight to India in 2004, in a French airplane, Air France plane, from Paris to Mumbai, there was a flight attendant, and she was not very Jewish. On the contrary, she was very un-Jew. She was Catholic, not even Protestant. And she was very French, not even Zionist. A few years after, she became the wife of the Israeli ambassador in Mauritania, and very, very Jewish. She puts the tzitzit to her son every morning. She goes to the synagogue, mikveh. She's my wife. Why do I say this? Because she's my wife. And why do I say this? Because she made a conversion, and we made an Orthodox conversion. It was very tough. But don't tell me that those rabbis in the Orthodox world don't respect you. Not true. Not true. The complicated thing, I will tell you what is the complicated thing. Complicated thing is, how would I say, the bureaucracy. It's like, try to imagine, leave conversion right now, try to imagine that you want to study to be a doctor, medicine studies. Why? Because you're going to make them easy, you want to have a good doctor. This is the study. Halakha is tough. Nobody will tell you that halakha is not tough. There are rules. Yet, what I don't like about what's happening right now in Israel is that the bureaucracy. Like medicine, you start 1 year, you have to know that it will take you 7 years. At the end of the process, you're a doctor. And this is good. And you can start the process if you have good grades, in this case, good intentions. This is the thing that you have to heal. This is the thing that you have to correct. Because I remember with my wife, with Vanessa, today Ruth, until we started the process, it was so tough. Until we found this framework in which, because the desire was there, the desire to study our religion, to come inside the Jewish people. You have to make it more easy. But then when you start the process by itself, you have to do it correctly. You have to do it beautifully. And now I know we met in the same synagogue, so we have to say a good word to Aviat Friedman, because we had this adoptive family who took us under their hands. And for 6.5 years, I mean, even myself, the husband, we took courses together. It was tough, but I'm happy it was tough, because what can we do? This is halakha. But you do have to make it easy for those, I mean, all those kids, I mean, whose parents came from old USSR, and it's unbelievable that they cannot, that you have to make the process easy for them, yet you have to study. This is what halakha requires. Now, I need a comment concerning to both remarks about relationship interaction between Jews in America and Jews in Israel. I think, Madam, you spoke beautifully. I think that the expectations are not the same, not only from us, but from Jews themselves, expectations from a Jew in America and expectation from a Jew in Israel. This is the big difference, and this also make the big, how would I say, the fact that we don't understand each other. Because for a Jew in America, he thinks that if, for example, they will make a survey and they will say, what is for you to be a Jew? And he will say, Tikkun Olam. Am I right? That's what you say, Tikkun Olam. So we look in Israel and say, what are the Tikkun Olam? This is luxury Jews. What is Tikkun Olam? Here we struggle to survive, and you speak about Tikkun Olam. What are you, Hermes, a Christian Dior Jews? I mean, come here and be a Jew like us. So I think that we wrongly judge each other because we don't understand, because you're excellent Jews, because you live in America, and you do what a loyal American patriot, and this is what you should be. We're proud of it that you're patriot of America, like patriotic in France. This is the beautiful thing about a Jew in his own country. Yet there is one thing at the end of the day. When you said people told you, when you came to Israel, why did you come to Israel? On the contrary, why don't you come to Israel? Because there is one thing that you will be clear with me, and you can be conservative, you can be liberal, you can be orthodox. Me love Jews anyway. Not loving Jews is for anti-Semitics. Jews must love every Jew. This is Jews. Jews have to embrace Jews. Leave it to the anti-Semite not to love Jews. We have to be together. And if a Jew wants to be like this, let him be like this. And if he wants to be, I respect him. I wouldn't be like this, but live and let live. Live and let live. This is what it is about. And the last thing I would say, and why do I say all this introduction, because caressing a bit before the injection, one thing that we are very sad about, and I have to be very honest with you, because I love you, because you're my family, and I want my family to be big, I want my family to be strong, is the assimilation part. Be conservative, be liberal, but stay Jew, please. Thank you.
Carolyn, do we have time for the last two together? So I'm taking the question from Wendy and Karen, and that'll be the end. We'll take the two questions together, please.
Okay. Hi, I'm Wendy Khan from the South African Jewish Board of Deputies. I think David spoke about it earlier. He mentioned the Amnesty International report. Maybe it's not such a big thing in Israel, maybe it's not such a big thing in America, but in other countries in the world, it really has hit us very hard. It's not just the Amnesty report, it's the Human Rights Watch report, it's going to be the United Nations report coming up. It's a series of these reports that are demonizing and delegitimizing Israel in the diaspora. And many of our communities are really suffering from these reports. And it seems like there hasn't been a great seriousness here to deal with it. Yes, I know there have been countries around the world that have dismissed it and have condemned it. But in a real way, it hasn't been dealt with. And I think also, just to take it to the next step, there just seems to be very little movement in terms of the peace process. It seems to be something that has got completely taken off the agenda. In these kind of discussions, that it always was such an important topic that we discussed, and it's very seldom discussed at the moment. So I just wanted to put that to you. Thank you.
I don't see, one second, we're supposed to get to the other question. I don't see, there she is. Okay, go ahead, please.
Thank you. Following up from Debbie's question and Tal's comments, and also about the diaspora, there seems to be a big disconnect. The fact that Tal could be in Chicago, Maryland, New York, and that there's an entire generation, and I don't even know if it's a generation, it might be people all of our ages who don't even know who Abbas is and who don't have a handle on the situation in Israel. And then how do you explain that? And in terms of the diaspora, we go back to the famous question of Hasbara. So the fact that there's an empty seat for discussing with the diaspora how to handle it, where does Hasbara fit into this so that we don't have the next generation uneducated?
So this will be the last round
Okay, so
of
let's
responses.
everyone who wants to weigh in, I want to reserve the right for a little weigh in as well. take it away. Do you want to go first, Tal?
If I understood correctly,
Keep it shortish.
the last question was about the disconnect between Israel's and diaspora while they not knowing enough about our... I mean, this is a fresh new government, so I don't expect them...
I mean, I can't be the first person to say this, but if you want your children and you want the next generation to be to have a strong Jewish identity and to be educated about Israel, then give them a Jewish education. I mean, I think that that's the most important thing. I think, the tuition at Jewish schools is outrageous. And I think that there should be, I am of the opinion that the American Jewish communal institutions should be working together to find solutions so that Jewish education is accessible and affordable to more Jews, because most Jews are not getting it. So I mean, that's what I think the answer is.
Maybe I just want, it's the end. Madam spoke about the fact that we don't have a peace, what did you say? Peace process. And this is a problem also for Jews, also in the diaspora we're doing. And maybe by that fact, it's very easy. Tell the people when you go back to America, to all those people who criticize us all the time, it's a good thing. We don't have a peace process, but we have peace. So it's better to have a peace without a process rather than we had 4 peace treaties a few months ago. So look how much Israel is not being explained or presented beautifully. And on the contrary, when you go back to America, be proud of the country you visited. That's it.
Okay, that was upbeat, but I want to bring you all back down again, just with some final remarks. So in answer to your question, I have to tell you, I don't think that there's great seriousness taken in terms of the way Israel's perceived. There are things that we have to do, and we have to defend ourselves. But nowhere in the operational cycle of decision-making is there somebody saying, okay, we understand we have to do A, B, and C. How are we going to make sure that this is understood internationally? If, for example, and I don't know the operational considerations, that a tower block has to be taken down in Gaza because it's a Hamas asset, even though international media is based there, did somebody weigh in the process and say, are we sure this is worth the price? And if it is, are we sure that we have all the material available right away so that people at least can understand why we had to do this? The answer is no. Nowhere in that cycle of consideration is somebody bringing that to bear. And that isn't changing. And that's, I mean, I'm a very old person now, and I've been doing this for a long time. This hasn't changed in 10, 20, 30, 40 years. I think it's unforgivable. And I just want to say one last thing about the question asked about whether there's any kind of forum. I think we do need a forum. I think we lack a forum of Israeli and Jewish leaders interacting, not in any kind of binding way and not in just an empty talking shop way, but so that each side better understands each other's concerns and therefore can handle the implications of everything that's going on in the respective communities. I really think that there's a place for that. I don't know how it should be set up. I'm not the first person to say this. I know Nathan Sharansky has talked about it for a long time. But we are geographically far apart. COVID kind of emphasized that, and we do misunderstand each other. And you're so right about the priorities. Tikkun olam, halavai aleinu, that's all we had to worry about here. When the Iranians are closing in on the bomb, you can understand why the priorities are different, but there isn't enough actual understanding. Events like this are a little part of it, and you can see how effective it can be. So I think we do need a forum like that. And thank you.
Thank you. Please, a big round of applause. This was excellent for our journalists. Thank you, Tal and Boaz and David and Lahav from the left. Thank you very much.
If people can please remain in their seats for one moment. Okay. Okay, thanks. I just want to continue with the announcements that we were rushing through because there's some important information that I want to communicate to everyone. The first thing is we will be leaving from the hotel at 4 o'clock to go to the municipality building. From there, if people haven't been there before, there's a magnificent balcony overlooking the city. We'll have a chance to be out there and absorb the Jerusalem that we've missed for the last 2 years. A couple of quick things. We will be sending on a regular basis push notifications through the app. So please be attentive to those notifications. Sometimes there'll be reminders about things, other times there'll be program changes. Again, I want to remind everybody that we are on a really tight schedule, so please be on time. Shh. including this departure at 4 o'clock this afternoon. Again, a note that some sessions will be off the record. They'll be posted, and I want to ask everyone to please respect the confidentiality of those sessions by no social media and no direct quotes from the speakers. We are posting photos on the Mission app, so if you want to use photos for your organization, please feel free to upload them from the app to your own